One thing I want to announce is there is an article about Han Dynasty China on iCollege. This article tells us that the climate of Han Dynasty China apparently cooled about the same time the climate of the Roman Empire cooled. Now, you may, if you've looked at your book at all, you know that the last part of chapter 5 contains some material on the comparison of Han Dynasty China and the Roman Empire, which will be on the next text. And you will need to at least do a brief reading. Well, it's only about a couple of pages, but we'll do a reading of this article that I posted on Han Dynasty China on iCollege. All right. So the test will actually consist of 3 parts: Greece, Rome, and Han Dynasty China. The authors did that several years ago, and I see their point. They want to, that they're doing what we call comparative history. All right, we left off last time with the Epicureans and Stoics. As time went on, the Greek interest in their old gods declined, and it did something, folk, that is really, really hard to understand, or hard for me to understand. They took up the worship of the gods, the people they had conquered. You have to wonder, well, hey, you know, if these gods could not save you, why would we start worshiping your gods when they couldn't save you? But they took up the gods, the people they conquered. This has been done by many, many people throughout much of history. And we'll find out later the Mongolians did this when they came in and destroyed part of the Islamic world. And then they became Islamic themselves. Now, as the interest in their gods declined, their favorite religion became the mystery religion. But before we get into that, there is something else I must mention about Hellenistic culture. Euclid is known as the father of geometry, the founder of geometry. Now, this is not going to be a real lesson on geometry, but I do want to mention Euclid and the Pythagorean theorem. Now, there is a web page on MSN where they name several people who might not even have existed. And it's the first time I heard it, but they say that Pythagoras might not even have existed. Be that as it may, his theorem is famous: a squared plus b squared equals c squared. Now, hopefully most of you know what I'm talking about. If this side is 3, never mind whether it's 3 feet, 3 inches, or 3 yards, and this side is 4, what will this side be? Assuming that this is a right triangle. Everybody know? A squared plus b squared equals c squared. I know. 5. Okay, yeah. Should be, yeah. This side is 3, this side is 4, this side is 5. A squared is 9, b squared is 16. 16 plus 9 equals 25. The square root of 25 is 5. All right. Again, a quick lesson on geometry that you possibly have run into already. There's another famous triangle called Plato's favorite. If this is a right triangle and this is 60 degrees and this is 30, the hypotenuse will be twice the length of the base. If the base is 1, the hypotenuse will be 2. If the base is 3, the hypotenuse will be 6. Again, there's just a couple of geometric people that I want you to be familiar with. You will be studying these people if you ever take a geometry class. All right. Now, back to their intellectual, philosophical, religious life. Very famous religions this time, the mystery religions. A lot of persons claim that Christianity came from the mystery religions. There were a couple of big differences, though, which is why I don't think Christianity really is a mystery religion. The mystery religions believed that there was a Savior God who had died, came back to life from the dead, and that you could find happiness by union with this Savior God. You could find union by going through an elaborate initiation ceremony. Now, The mystery religions, though, only took in the elite. And it was just like the fraternities you might find on a college. It has dormitories or a dormitory campus. They'll form fraternities, and each fraternity tries to get the quote-unquote best of the people in that fraternity. The sororities do the same thing. And the mystery religions, one mystery religion would say, oh, we have the mayor of the town in our group, or in our fraternity. Another one say, oh, but we have Professor so-and-so in ours. We have the town clerk, or we have, they only accepted the very best of people. The mystery religions are called mystery because they were secret. It reminds you a lot of the Masons or the other secret groups. You're right. Now, in contrast, there were two big differences between Christianity and the mystery religions. Difference number one, Christianity took in, Christianity had no secrets. A Christian was able to tell everybody in the world what they believed. And there were no mysteries, no secrets. The other one was Christianity took in everybody. In other words, took in the educated, the uneducated, the successful, the unsuccessful, even the thief, the prostitute. Well, they tried to change those people's ways, but they took them in. The mystery religions did not. And except for the baptism, ceremony of baptism, there was no elaborate initiation they had to undergo to get into the Christian church. Basically, you just simply had to say, I want to join. Now, with the mystery religions, you did not ask to join. If they wanted you, they'd go find you and bring you in. With the church, you could ask to join, promise to abide by their rules, maybe undergo a counseling session or whatever, and you were in. So there were a few differences, which leads me to say that Christianity was not a mystery religion. The worship of Isis came back into prominence along about this time. Again, it had to do with a mother who had a son, the son who died, and mother and son traded places every 6 months. Now, Greece was to spend the next 2,300 years ruled by foreigners and basically in poverty. I remember when I was 9 years old, our geography book, when we visited the land of Greece in our geography lesson, the opening statement was, the Greeks were once very powerful and very strong, but today they are poor. Their people have suffered terribly from the wars. And yes, the Greeks suffered very terribly during both world wars. They have not been strong or rich, and in more recent times than the wars, some of their unwise economic policies have helped bring down the economies of all the nations that have been part of the union that they've joined up with. All right. Anyway, they were first conquered by Macedonians, then conquered by the Romans, then they became part of the Byzantine Empire, then they were overrun and conquered by the Muslims. And Hitler overran them greatly during World War II. All right. Now, moving on. Chapter 5, Rome. Italy and Greece are both peninsulas, but Rome's hills are not as steep and rugged as those of Greece, which makes it made it easier for Italy to be united. And another thing, too, that it makes it easier for the people in Italy to build roads than what the Greeks did. Rome was located, let's put it this way. If this were Italy, it kind of looks like a foot. Rome was not located in the central part of Italy, but it was located near the western coast, but centrally located to the western coast. However, it was not located along the coast. It was located some 50 miles inland with two purposes for that. Number one was to keep it from being overrun by tidal waves, which we believe were very, very strong then. And tidal waves are making news even at this moment. Earthquakes and tidal waves, still a big problem. But might have been an even bigger problem then. So Rome was put 50 miles inland. It was located along the banks of the Tiber River. It's like so many of the ancient cities located on the banks of rivers. And another reason for being located 50 miles inland, piracy was a huge, huge problem in those days. Pirates were people who could not find a lot of work, and oftentimes they'd resort to piracy. And it was kind of lucrative, and the Romans felt like they could not fight the pirates because it would just be too expensive. So the pirates were much too often allowed to roam the seas freely. And there were no airplanes, there was no satellite, were no satellites in orbit, no way to spot them. And believe it or not, even in the modern world, there are at least one nation in the world that's making a living by piracy, because the other nations of the world just feel like it's too expensive to go after them. Anyway, but by putting the city 50 miles inland, this was designed to intimidate the pirates from going up the river where they run a risk of the river being like sealed off by Roman warships, and thereby the pirates would be trapped. All right. Now, we don't know much about Rome's original inhabitants. They were called Latins, and Latin became the official language of the Romans. And it remained the language of the Romans until the time of the fall of the Roman Empire. We don't know much about the Latins, but later the Etruscans moved in, then the Greeks. That may be why the Italians worshiped the same gods as the Greeks did. As Greece is a difficult land to farm, and it could only support so many people. So as Greece became overpopulated, the Greek people scattered out, going to Rome, going to Italy, going to Sicily, and then going to Asia Minor to the west. So the Greeks established colonies throughout much of the Mediterranean. All right. According to tradition, Rome was founded by Romulus and Remus. I'll get to that. Rome is called the city. It's called two names. It's called the Eternal City. It's also called the City of Seven Hills. All right, but back to Romulus and Remus. Now, according to the story, all right, have any chance been to a town in Georgia about 70 miles from here called Rome, Georgia? In Rome, Georgia, they used to have, a couple of you, a bronze statue of Romulus and Remus. The statue, there's the two twin boys, or babies, being nursed by a she-wolf. Now, I was asked not too long ago by a close friend who went to Italy, isn't this story pure mythological? I said, well, there are at least 50 documented cases of human babies being adopted by wolves called feral. Again, I looked it up. Once I got home, I looked it up. And most of these stories are probably fake or possibly fake, but there are at least 50 documented cases. So The idea that Romulus and Remus were thrown out by their mother, who did not want them. Their father was Mars, the god of war. I mean, okay, believe what you will, folks. This is the way that, I'm telling you the way that the Romans told us. Their father was Mars. Their mother was an earth woman who did not want them, so put them out. She put them out. And a wolf found them, nursed them, brought them up. The boys grew up. They got into a squabble, though, over which one of the 7 hills that they should fortify. The one brother wanted to put one hill, the other brother wanted to put another. So they went to their maternal grandfather and asked the maternal grandfather which hill, and the maternal grandfather said the one that has the most birds. Well, for Remus, his bird came first, but for Romulus, more birds came to him than for Remus. So they squabbled over the issue. The one Romulus came in because he had more birds. Remus came in because his bird was first. So Romulus killed Remus, and then Romulus set the fortress up on the hill he wanted to, and the city was named Rome after Romulus. According to early tradition, the city was ruled by 7 kings. The writer Livy, the historian Livy, wrote a lot of what we know about early Rome. However, a lot of the stories that Livy wrote are not quite believable. Now, your book has in it the story of Cincinnatus, where the city of Cincinnati is named after him. But according to the story, Cincinnatus was a mean man, really hard to get along with. Nevertheless, he was quite capable of leading troops. I mean, when you're in the army, you expect your sergeants, your captain, your officers to be mean. Anyway, the enemy was attacking, and nobody wanted to lead the Romans against the enemy. So they went to Cincinnatus and said, hey, we'll give you the top office for 6 months if you'll lead us to victory over enemies. Cincinnatus had to wipe the dirt off his hands and finally consented, okay, I'll lead you for 6 months. He got together, collected all the young men in the city, went out, organized the men, defeated the enemy. He still had 5.5 months or so to go in his term of office, but instead he told the people of Rome, I can't lead you in peacetime. I can lead an army, but I can't lead a peacetime group. And folks, sometimes leading in peace is harder than leading in war. Cincinnatus laid down his vestments of authority, went back to his farm. We have a little bit of a difficult time believing the story because Cincinnatus' morals seem to be almost too high. There's another story of Horatius on the bridge where the Roman the enemy was attacking, and the enemy was coming close to a bridge that we can destroy the bridge. The enemy will never be able to attack us because the river is going too fast and the banks are too steep. We've got to destroy the bridge. Who's going to volunteer to protect the men who are destroying the bridge? Horatius said, I will. And he stepped forward. He crossed the bridge. He held off the enemy while his buddies behind him were destroying the bridge. By the time the bridge was destroyed, Horatius was killed. Again, the bravery seems exceptional, but these stories are possibly true, but they're difficult to tolerate. Don't want to make a comparison, don't want to discuss it, but there are stories going around right now about things that happened many, many years ago that are just difficult to prove after a certain amount of time. Anyway, maybe all of you know what I mean. Anyway, the problem with the end of these stories was Livy wrote as a secondary source generations after the events would have happened. Now, he might have had primary sources available to him that we don't have today. Who knows, we might find some original sources about Cincinnatus. We might even find some original sources about Horatius. There are other stories about Sabine women, about Caesar's wife having been above reproach that we just can't corroborate. Now, 250 years ago, a historian said that those first 7 kings did not exist. And you might wonder, well, why would he say that it didn't exist? Well, he said we have no original sources All we have is secondary sources that have written hundreds of years after these kings would have existed. The whole purpose was to question, and maybe this is good, but to question all that the ancients have told us and make it seem like, of course, a lot of what the ancients told us we find unbelievable. Nevertheless, we now know, the historian's name was given, don't worry about that name though. We now know for sure that the last three of them really did exist. Anyway, Rome started out with kings. They eventually decided we don't want a king, so they deposed their last king. Hopefully all of you got this. Deposed their last king and they set up a republic. Or a republic is like a democracy, but it's not a democracy in a republic only a few people actually are in charge, rather than everybody being able to vote. Republic, the republic was to last several generations, and like the Greek democracies, which mostly failed after a time, the republic did too. During this period, right at the beginning of the days of the Republic, a group of people called the Celts came down. I won't write that down, but the Celts came in and they sacked Rome. This was around 400 BCE. It was to be 800 years before Rome was sacked again. Rome was sacked by the Vandals in 410 CE. In 400 or so BCE, Rome was sacked by the Celts. However, Rome quickly recovered. They were versatile. They were hard-working people. They quickly recovered. The Celts went on to become Gaul, and eventually, and this is a war right now, Gaul is what we now know of as France. The people of Gaul were eventually conquered by Rome. All right. Rome had enemies on all sides. But their enemies spoke the same language and worshipped the same gods and had basically the same religious beliefs. Rome was somewhat centrally located, which made it ideal for them to do what they did. But finally they defeated a city-state in battle. Then they said to this city-state, "Be our ally. We will build a road from our city to yours. You're welcome to have your daughters marry our sons. In turn, our sons will be willing to marry your daughters. We'll make that legal. If you are attacked by another city-state, we'll come to your aid. We expect you to come to our aid if we're attacked." So they got one city-state. Then later, they defeated another city-state, but they got them to join. Now, I want to say this about ally. They treated their defeated foes with a lot of courtesy and respect and got the defeated foes on their side. Now, this was good up to a point. Now, in our own history, after World War I, the victorious power said, "We're going to make Germany pay. We're going to punish Germany. We're going to make Germany pay reparations." Germany came back and fought again. After World War II, we said, "We're going to go in and we're going to rebuild Germany. We've destroyed them, but we're going to build them." Germany has been our friends from that day to this. Same thing with the Japanese. We fought the Japanese, and after the war was over, we went in and rebuilt the Japanese. Now, we do occupy both countries still. We have American troops still in Germany. The British have British troops still in Germany. And we have American troops still in Japan. But we went into these places and rebuilt them, and they became our friends. At least a friendship that has lasted for 3 generations. Well, the Romans developed friendships with the conquered peoples, and they built roads to where it became a saying, among other sayings, that all roads